Welcome back to Quilt and Color. My name is Shalina. Today for my 15 minutes to quilt, I'm going to be working on my African Prince Crazy Quilt. This video is part of a series of videos for the 15 minutes to quilt challenge. I hope that you sew along with me so that you can enter to win prizes. My African Prince Crazy Quilt is made with African fabrics and it's centered around this guy who I'm calling a prince because of the regal nature. And for my prince, I'm building a village around for him. Let me show you a close-up of this block that's finished. There's giraffes and the sun and the leaf. Lots of designs. I've got huts for him and water. Water's always good, and fish, so he has something to eat, some place to live. For my 15 minutes to quilt today, I wanted to finish off this foundation, which is not complete. You can see that this is the blue is the foundation fabric, and there's some parts missing here, and it needs to be trimmed to finish off the section. And I also need 3 more blocks, so I thought today I would just work on showing you how I created the foundations for my quilt. This is not going to be a tutorial on how to build a foundation block because I haven't thought through all the questions you might have, but I will show you how I'm doing it for the blocks that I'm making today. And if that's something that you would like to have a complete tutorial, I'd be happy to add one. Just let me know in the comments. So let's get started. Let me show you the blocks I've made for the African Prince Crazy Quilt. So this one is the one that's the most finished. And you can see I drew lines here. I sewed some lines to keep myself inside the square. I might still be able to add some more things, but I'll save that for another day. This one is one that we worked on last time. I just got started on embellishing this block. This is the prince with his shiny fabric, and he's got all sorts of shiny fabric around him because he is the prince, the wealthy prince. Okay, so this block was a little bit short over here, even though this is probably part of the seam. I decided to just go ahead and make sure that it would be enough, and so I sewed a bigger piece of fabric across here, and that's one of the things you have to remember about a quilt like this is you can always just make it work. So if you make a mistake, if something doesn't work right for you, you can always just change it up. And I think that this actually adds some more interest to the corner of the quilt as well. Next up is a block that isn't completed. You can see that there's still blue sections here and here that need to be finished. And today we can work on completing those. And then I also have 3 other foundations. I ran out of the blue fabric, so I just cut some other fabric that I had in the stash that I wanted to use up. This one was a little bit hard for me to use, but there's a lot of I still have a lot of fabric left from this, so I can still use that for other projects, or even this one. And the neat thing about this fabric is that I won't necessarily have to cover this up entirely. I could probably leave some of it available for this crazy quilt. The colors are not exactly the same, but I think small amounts of this peeking through would just be fine. Would be just fine on this quilt because we've already used some other African fabric in this quilt. Okay, so what else we have here inside the box is just a whole bunch of different fabrics to embellish these blocks and to make them. So let's see. So to finish this block off, we just need some fabric to cover up these sections here. Okay, so for now I'm just going to be looking for some other fabrics that I can use to add to this quilt. Like for here, I could easily add a little bit of orange strip to cover this up. And then for this section, maybe the purple would work fine. We'll go with that. There's no need to overthink it. There's really no need whatsoever to overthink this at all. So I need something that will go here in this corner. I think something like this would work just fine. And so just cutting off a big triangle will work fine for this. And then what I can do is I can just sew this like this, and I can choose what angle I want. I can hide as much of this fabric as I want. But I'd like to cover up this intersection here if I could. So I think what I'll do, oh, that's too much. Okay, so what I can do is, hopefully this piece is big and long enough that I can cover up this intersection because it's a raw edge, and start, and it really doesn't matter where I start, but something that's like a straight line I'd like to be able to use to hide as little as possible. But if I just sew it here like this, there we go, then this will cover what I need without hiding too much of the other fabric that's already here. And so it'll hide some of the black, but that's okay because there's plenty of black available that you can see. So I am going to just put a pin here to remind myself to sew this direction. There's this fuzz on here. It looks like must be some kind of fuzzy fabric I have here. Okay. So I'll just sew here, and then when I'm finished, it'll just look like this. And that'll cover up the space without covering up too much. And then on this side, maybe the purple fabric will work here. A big piece of purple, but that's okay. Oh, and if you have a question about what happens if I wind up not catching the seam exactly, again, if I accidentally don't cover the seam exactly, it's really not a problem because I can always add a bead or something to cover up the raw edge. So a bead or lace or a trim or something else, so it's really not going to be a problem either. There's really no problems in this quilt. Everything is a design choice. So for this one, let's go this direction. Let me see if I can. I don't want to cut up the people if I don't have to. So let's go this direction, like that. It'd be kind of nice to be able to leave them so that you can see in this direction, like this, depending on what the top of the fabric is. If I put it this way, they'll be upside down, so I need to go this way so that they'll be right side up when I do this. Okay, so if I cover up from here to here, and I need to go 1/4 of an inch in, then the fabric size that I need is approximately like this. Make sure I'm covering this. So I think this will work here, like this. Oh, I need to go, what am I doing? Okay, if I go like this. Okay, I think I'm not going to be able to get the people in here this way, so I'll just go like this. Although I can cut some more of this if I did want the people inside the block. Some people have issues with this because improv quilts does use a lot of fabric. I personally am not worried about that because you're not really wasting fabric. Anything that you trim off of this part, you can always put in a different part of the quilt. So to me, it's not a lot of waste, and you can cut in a way that you're not going to waste a lot of fabric. So for here, if I do this, my people are going to be pretty much cut off, except for little small amounts. So what I think I'm going to do is just to trim off a little bit of this so that I can have more of them in the quilt. So I want to cover this at least 1/4 of an inch inside here, and also here 1/4 of an inch inside here. And so if I sew this together here in this way, the people will wind up being cut here. So there is a little bit of the people inside, but not very much. I still have like 1/2 inch left. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim this a little bit more so I can get more of them. Okay. I don't normally fussy cut to be able to put the people in. I don't normally fussy cut to get things in, but these people just to me feel like they needed to be in the block. And so probably when I'm cutting, when I'm trimming this block, I'll probably cut off the bottom of their bodies, but their faces and their hands will be in there, so that's what's important to me. And this here you can see is a raw edge, and I could try to cover that up, but I don't really want to because I want to keep as much of this fabric as possible in this one. So I'm not worried about this raw edge being here because I can always cover it up again with some bead or something else, with some kind of embellishment here. So we'll pin here, 1/4 of an inch in here, and hopefully 1/4 of an inch here. And then when I press it, it'll be just to the right spot. Okay, so let's, I can also do the same thing for this little corner here. This is too small. There's this fabric. And I think I want to cover up some of this orange because this is a nice snazzy fabric and I'd like to be able to see more of that. So I'm going to cover this much, maybe. As wide as this is as far as I can go. And so I'll just put that one there. Okay, so this block is ready for sewing, and we'll work on the next one. And this one has all sorts of possibilities because it's completely empty. And you can choose any kind of shape that you want to put in here to start off with. So since we have this fabric out, we might as well just put some of this in here. I like this frame section. And you can make it any shape that you want. You can make it a square or a triangle or rectangle, and it doesn't really have to be any particular shape. I recommend that you have something with straight lines, so something that is a square or a rectangle or a triangle, and not something that's curved. Curved is fine, but it just takes up it's just a little bit more work to try to work around it. And you can always just applique something on the top if you wanted circles. Okay, so let's start with this. We'll just start a square. I'm going to trim this off even though I don't need to. I just don't want that in the quilt. We're going to wind up trimming off the seams anyway, so let me show you this again. Once I sew this here, I'm going to trim this excess off, and so it won't have as much bulk. And here, likewise, I'm going to trim this excess off if I can. Some of this is pieced in, so I just leave it there because it's not really a problem. And likewise here, this is covering up. With this fabric, I'm going to be covering up this extra piece that I did. So I could either just pick this out and take it out, or I can just leave it in either way. but taking it out, it's probably going to be easier for me to do the embellishment by hand, just because the more layers you have, the harder it is to hand sew. Okay, so once we have established the center of the block, and you can choose the size that you want. I'm probably not going to use this size, but I can always just cover it up and then trim it down to make it work. Let's grab some orange, because this is an orange quilt. We want to make sure that we keep our orange. Try to think of the shape I want. Okay. So the bigger the pieces, the less work there's going to be for you to finish up covering up everything. So I could just make a piece that goes right down here. Is there any other? I have this fabric. This part's already cut, so we can just use that. We can just add this here. If we sew this down, then we'll have that in the corner, or we could make a diagonal if we wanted to. Yeah, I think I like the diagonal look better. So I'll put something like this in here. And I'll be sewing this against this. So it'll look like this. And before I sew this, I'll probably need something that goes this direction. So I could use the same fabric here, or I could use a different one. Oh, also for this, I don't have to use the cotton now. I can use other things too. Let's add something with some texture in it. Okay, so I kind of like the idea of having this little piece here. It's going to go into the corner, so maybe what we could do is move this down a little bit so that it winds up being in the corner without me having to piece another thing in the back. Okay, so this one is going to go first. And we can just, this is the shiny side. So I will piece this in first. Have to be careful not to stretch it. So then it'll wind up being like this, all the way to the corner. And then this piece can go 1/4 of an inch in here to cover this. So then it'll look like this. And this one will go next. Maybe this way. So as you can see, it's really not difficult to do, but it's just a matter of playing around until you are happy with the way everything looks. I want this one to be a little bit more diagonal. There we go. I have this light colored fabric Let me see what it looks like with the yellow background. Looks pretty interesting, actually. Maybe the green background? No, if you put it in the green, you can't really see the colors. You can't, I guess you can. It's a little subtle, though. Let's see. I think we need some black anyway. How about this one? This is a dress. This used to be a dress. I have small patches of black in this quilt. I don't want to put too much in here, but just enough to add some interest. So this can go diagonal like this. But I don't know if I cut it enough. I guess I can make it smaller. And I can also use other parts of this, like I could use this part of it somewhere else. Just 'cause I like this colors. You don't actually have to lay it out like this. You can basically just start cutting and sewing one piece at a time and just figure out what the next piece is going to be. That's probably the easiest way to do this, is just to work on one piece at a time and then just go on to the next thing. I think that's how I made the other blocks, because it was a lot easier. This planning takes a little bit more time to do. It actually takes a lot more time to do. Because you know what it's going to look like when it's finished, it's a little bit less scary, so that you can make sure that it looks exactly the way you want it to. But it does take a little bit more time for the planning stage. I have this little strip of fabric from my other quilt, and it's got orange in it, so I think I like orange in here this way. And you also have choices about whether you want to hide the seams, because I could just leave it the way it is like this and cover up the rest of the seams like this. But then I can just make sure that I add a ribbon here to hide these two raw edges instead of having to piece it. And the other option I have is to put something else in between these two, so that I don't have to worry about piecing something in the end. I can just piece something here, which maybe is what I should do, is just piece something in between these two. There's another piece. I'll just use this one. So if I sew this here, I was going to show you how easy this is, but it's complicated when you're trying to piece it one at a time. I think for me, just letting serendipity happen and just piecing a little bit at a time is the easiest way to do it. And that way you know exactly what you're left with. And then just add this piece on the diagonal. And we could leave this green, the yellow in the background. And then it'll look something like this. Okay, my 15 minutes are up, so I hope that I didn't confuse you more than I helped you on this particular project. It is easy once you get hang of it, but it's been Well, actually, it's been several years since I did the foundation piecing because last year we just embellished blocks. And I've been embellishing the blocks that I've already made for a while, for several years. But now I do remember that I did do one piece at a time and I didn't plan it out like I'm doing today. So the next time that I work on these foundation blocks, I'm just going to piece them one piece at a time instead of planning it out. I think the only plan that I had was to make sure that I had a little piece of black in it so that there would be enough contrast all throughout the quilt. I hope that you were inspired by the progress that I made on my African Prince Crazy Quilt. This video is one of a series of videos where I invite you to my quilting room and see what I'm working on for my 15 minutes to quilt. And I hope that you had a chance to sew along with me so that you can enter to win for prizes. I'm giving away 2 copies of a book that I wrote especially for quilters, and I really think that you're going to find it very useful. There's 2 ways that you can enter to win. The first way is to sew along with me for 15 minutes, and if you did that, just leave a comment to let me know what you worked on today, and you'll be entered to win that prize. The second way is simply to just watch this video, and if you did that, just let me know in the comments something that happened in the video today. It's really heartwarming to see all of the projects that you were working on and how much you're getting done in your 15 minutes to sew. I'm glad that it's providing motivation for you to give yourself time every day to relax and get away from the busyness of the season. I put a link to yesterday's video here in case you missed that. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you in the next video.